all of us in our company, and my father and I, we've had a very simple metric that we want to grow every year 15 to 20%. Now, that's it. Now if you compound that over 5 years, maybe it doubles 4 years, 5 years. And growth is not linear. There will be years where you may grow 25, 30%. There will be flat years. There may be a negative, but you take it in your stride, accept it. And that's really the vision for the next 20 years. And then how do you get to that growth? I think you touched upon your markets being limited, and that's absolutely right. In a B2B business with specialty products, once you've achieved 60% market share in a product, you can't grow beyond that. So you add other products, you diversify. We've also grown through adding capacity. First, adding capacities, becoming one of the top 3 in that particular product, and then diversifying.
My guest today is Vinati Saraf Mutreja. She's the CEO and MD of 2,000 crore plus specialty chemicals and pharmaceutical ingredients company based out of Bombay. A lot of that wealth creation and the scale which Vinati has built has come after she joined the company in 2006. Of course, the name of the company and her are synonymous. So when I say Vinati, it's interchangeable. While you may not have used their products directly, if you've ever been unwell and taken medicines like ibuprofen to relieve body aches, her company, Vinati Organics, may have touched your life. Recently, Vinati was named Business Leader of the Year by Economic Times in the ET Prime Women Leadership Awards 2023. And I had the fortune of being on the jury, and that's how I was introduced to her. She's also been featured as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum, and Forbes listed her as one of Asia's most powerful businesswomen in 2020. She's also a practitioner of yoga. She's a board director at Make-A-Wish India. And she's been known for someone who's a business leader who struck a balance between working hard on both the business and herself. Vinati, welcome to the Blume Podcast. And thanks for this time today.
Thanks, Karthik, for having me.
So, Vinati, basically, we'll try and talk to the audience on 3 different subjects. One is, of course, the story of your journey at Vinati Organics. What the business itself is, what are business challenges in manufacturing. It's not very often that we get a manufacturing leader on our podcast. And the third is the theme for this year's podcast has been the power of compounding. So how do you put a whole bunch of levers in place, suddenly that magic starts happening after a decade or a decade and a half? And so people think that's easy, that's the toughest part. And for that, a decade has to sort of pass. And jokes apart, when some of the people who we considered inside of our consideration set came by, we said if they've not spent 10 years building the business, they probably don't qualify for this year's podcast. And clearly, company story and your personal story are testament to this. So maybe we can roll the clock back a little. Would love to hear the origins of the company. I know your father started it. What made you, coming out of your education in the US, think of coming back to India? Why did you join the business? It's a very different India. Because I came back also, by the way, in 2006 after 7 years in the US. And people kept asking me, why are you back? Why haven't you stayed back in the US? Yes, there was an export growth story always in India, but I don't know if you foresaw that, but it would be wonderful to go back and replay some of that history in your life.
I think you rightly said that the seeds of tremendous success are laid much, much early on.
Sure.
And in that sense, I would say I've had it easier compared to a lot of entrepreneurs.
Sure.
Because the company was started in 1990 when I was 6 years old by my father.
Which explains why he named it after
It's named. I would never give that name.
Yeah.
If I left it to me, it would be a completely different name. But anyways, So he's the one who took a lot of risk. He had a good job at Aditya Birla before when he left. And he's the first generation entrepreneur. Now, growing up, going to the factory was very normal. My father doesn't have a chemistry background. So he would, when I was a teenager, he would talk to me about chemistry, trying to, get answers out of my chemistry textbook. He was trying to understand how the mass balance works. And that's how my interest in chemistry developed.
Okay.
So by the time I was 18 or so, or 17, I knew I wanted to do engineering in chemistry and also have a business background because I was interested in his business. So I went, abroad. I did a dual bachelor's in business and engineering. And even then, my father would visit me and take me to meet customers around the East Coast.
Oh, wow.
And so my exposure to my business started really in 2002, 2003
While at
onward,
college.
while at college. After graduation, also, I worked for a summer. You can call it an internship in the company. And I saw a lot of potential then, but I did go back to New York to work just for 7 months simply because I wanted to live in Manhattan. And it was a consulting job, but
Yeah.
I always knew I would come back and join this business because I saw I could make more of an impact. Given the position I was in, I could, make more of a difference.
Very similar emotions when I came back.
So then I moved back in 2006. But we were still a very, very small company, even though we were a 15, 16-year-old company.
That was the pace of growth back then.
Yeah. And if I remember, our revenues were 60 crores. If you take volumes, because we look at volume growth, not just revenue growth, because revenue means price and inflation.
That's correct.
Etc. So it was 2000. I think we were doing about, total as a company, we may be doing 8,000 tons or less. Today we do over 1 lakh tons. And in revenue growth, it is like you said, from 60 crores to 2,000. Now, valuation and stock price is a different story.
That's a different story. We'll
all
come to
together,
that.
Let's not touch upon that.
Yeah.
But
so 12 times in tonnage and maybe 30 times in revenue.
Yeah, because that's inflation,
inflation
price. I know a lot of our volumes is also we backward integrated.
Correct.
So there's more tonnage. There's more tonnage, but that doesn't get added in our sales volume as such.
But it does improve
improve our margins, and it does help us overall.
Fascinating. So, by the way, I don't know about which audiences you're nervous around, but I can name one person who will be super interested in the podcast, which is my daughter, to bring a personal touch. She's 15, loves STEM to the chagrin of her artist's mother, and wants to pursue chemistry. So there you go. So you might hopefully be a role model to at least one girl I know. So, the growth, when you said it kicked in at 60 crores, what do you think was happening in the first 16 years other than the fact that it does take time? So why did it take 16 years to get to 60 crores? And then what transforms? I mean, you almost have seen, two more subsets of journeys, something like 2006 to 14, and then the 10 years from there. And there's different types of compounding happening. So can you walk us through what you learned when you came in?
Yeah, so when I joined in 2006-07, we were mostly selling domestically. Our exports percentage was very less. Today, we do more than 60-65% exports. And there are multiple reasons for it. Like I remember meeting a large US MNC customer, and they wouldn't. Again, these are niche products. I should specify. We make niche.
Maybe a little bit about
we make specialty. We make specialty chemicals.
Primary applications would be.
So you said ibuprofen.
Yeah.
Now that's the product we started with in 1990. We make the ingredient for that, IBB. Back then, that was 100% of our portfolio. Today, it is 15%.
Understood.
Less than 20%.
Massive diversity.
And then we diversified into ATBS that's used in oil and gas. It's used in water treatment. Then today, we make products for flavors and fragrances. We make for resins, plastics, various industries. The challenge was that customers said they didn't want to rely on an Indian supplier because they were worried about the geopolitical situation in India. India, they said if there's a war with India, Pakistan, then my supply will get disrupted. Today, India is much more visible.
We're talking about the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah, this is in 2006-07.
Yeah.
So bagging that first large contract. And so these products also work on long-term contracts.
Absolutely.
Because once you get a contract, you are in it for 10 years.
Correct.
These are formula-based pricing. Your margins are almost secured.
That's right.
$1 per kg. So bagging that first 1 or 2 contracts, that was really key to our, and then when you get the first 2 with these MNCs, then more follow on.
Because you're referenceable now.
Exactly. You're referenceable.
And so when you joined, you think what the export number was very low? And
yes, absolutely. It was not even 10% of our sales.
So your dad was trying to break through.
Yeah.
How did Vinati come and change that in some sense?
No, I think it was a joint effort. We would go together, meet customers. He, of course, had the knowledge,
of course,
the experience. I was learning. I was more of a translator. And I think that could have also been for these customers to see, okay, now there is a next generation in this business. We have this foreign educated, second generation come in, and that might have, of course, we also had built the scale.
Correct.
And we were offering the most competitive, price, quality in a manufacturing business, you have to be the most competitive. Your quality has to be at par. And to give you an example, these products were they were paying 50% higher than what we were offering.
Okay.
So once they got convinced of our organization and our ability to deliver and to service them over a long term, that's how we got these contracts.
Like you were saying something around how B2B businesses build quietly. And it's interesting because I think a lot of enterprises seek that stability. Like, if I'm going to risk a lot of my business, whether it's a productivity software or whether it's an input for my core ingredients, is that a long-term sustainable business that I'm going and partnering with? So if you don't have 5-10 year visibility, why would I even bother? And which is why it's so difficult to break into enterprise, even in the stuff we fund, which is typically on the software side. But it's a lovely insight to pick up. So thank you for sharing that. As a corollary to that, I know you spoke about an aha moment where you managed to finally break through to these enterprise customers. Today, what percentage of your business is global exports, basically?
I would say at least 65%. Like ATBS, which is our largest product today, is 90-95% exports. IBB, which we were selling only in India, today in India accounts for 35-40% of the sales, maybe less.
Understood. And there I've always wondered in these commoditized businesses, where which also is a challenge sometimes for, again, I'm trying to apply software which we know well at Blume. In commoditized businesses, how do you differentiate even within, like, of course you're cheaper than, let's say, whatever the current source was, but it's not like India is not competitive. There are probably few players in every one of the materials that you manufacture, right?
It's been unique processes. Like even the IBB technology was licensed from a foreign player. ATBS was a patented technology. It's been 20 years. So it was a different process. Then our second, the way we have grown is integration, so meaning synergies with our existing business. So what happened after ATBS? We backward integrated. We started making the raw material for ATBS, IB, which there was very small capacity in India. So we've not only using it for captive, we are also selling it to other users who were importing, and imports have stopped. Then from isobutylene, we started making other derivatives. Like the butyl phenols, which go into flavors and fragrances. From those, we've gone further ahead, and now we are making antioxidants that go into polymer additives in plastic. So it has been the entire value chain.
Move to adjacent strengths.
Exactly. Even using the same process that we use to manufacture a particular product, what other products can we make with the similar chemistry? This is what creates our moat. And this is what makes you less commoditized.
Understood.
And not all products are commodity. For some of our products, we are actually the only manufacturer in the world.
Oh.
It's like a CRAMS model, We are the only ones that make it, and for specific users, for specific applications.
Fascinating.
And that is why margins also may not be very commoditized.
Understood. And, this is another interesting thing that we have seen more so in B2B businesses than in B2C businesses, where it is important to leverage sort of the core product win to be able to start delivering more and more to the customers, so that you build moats of that nature, and you use your competencies to go wider and build a portfolio. Otherwise, the market size might not look large. And we'll come to that when we talk about the future of Vinati. I'm fascinated, given where the journey has come so far. How big can this be in the future is what I would love to hear. You have two paths. Either you choose to get acquired because you don't have the competencies or capabilities or dreams to say, I'll do multi-product, multi-geography, which is what you're doing, right? Even if it's with, people might consider boring specialty chemicals, but it's fascinating that you have to do that to scale to 2,000 crores. And we don't see enough founders having the ability to maneuver. And they sell a product, and eventually the product gets acquired. So B2B, in fact, in our business, by the way, so far about 8 to 10 mid-sized exits have happened, and all of them are B2B software to global players. Because once they reach a certain scale, the question is, can you grow 20x from here? Like how Vinati grew as a company. And they're making the call saying, no, I think we're done. We're getting a nice price and we can get out and build something else. Of course, it's not easy to keep building new chemical plants. I know you touched upon the fact that you came in 06 and you started working alongside your dad. How has that apprenticeship been? Like, not very common in tech to see intergenerational businesses. I think for the first time, of course, the Ambanis announced it this week, so it's flavor of the week. But, in Falguni's case, we've seen it, but it's very rare that you see this in technology businesses. Professionals run it. So you chose to come into the business. You loved the subject. You came and took over the reins. But how was that journey? Did you have to apprentice yourself through to becoming CEO or, yeah. And can you give a glimpse, because not too many people are familiar with, that in the tech world at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
What does that look like for 8-10 years?
So most manufacturing businesses in India are multi-generational.
Chemical, pharmaceuticals.
In our age. And the difference, I think, at least in my opinion, we view our businesses as a multi-generational business. We don't view it as, if I get a good price or a good value, I'm going to sell it.
That's good.
And that's the inherent difference. I'm not saying what is right or wrong. Each person has their own view. And so first few years, of course, I spent learning, and anybody has to, right? When you're 22, 20, 21, 23, you're learning in every department.
That's good.
Sales, purchase, factory, meeting customers, writing emails, checking accounts. And then over time, you develop, right? You start understanding, you get the knack of business. You realize that I can add more value in a more decision-making role.
That's right.
Rather than just executing all the time. And that is pretty much what happened in my case as well. I'll also address one more point.
Yes, please.
That chemicals is a non-sexy industry, and your daughter is from the market's perspective, chemical companies nobody in the stock market was interested in chemical companies. Pharma was way more sexier. We would get multiples of much less than a pharma company, simply because they were in pharma, even if their product was more commoditized. Even if you were a specialty, even if you were unique, you had better margins. Things have changed now. But the young generation, they are looking at chemicals as like your daughter. In the last few months, so many people have asked me for an internship because they understand chemicals is where the new innovation, whether it is green hydrogen, EVs, carbon footprinting and, environment-friendly technologies. The heart of everything is chemistry.
That's correct.
So suddenly, more and more young generation people want to study chemistry and are not viewing this as a very traditional.
No, that's a very interesting point. I mean, you talk about anything around materials today. And in fact, the fact that, environment has come back in such a strong way in the last, 3-4 years. I think everyone was sleeping on it till the pandemic hit and woke everyone up. And now it's like prime time, right? Do we have a shot at saving the planet from far, far more human catastrophes? And right in the middle of that is chemistry more than even biology, right? Biology is post facto. Chemistry is, in advance of that. We have believe it or not, one star company in this space. So 2 IIT Kharagpur kids came straight out of college, had a solvent that they tested in a lab. And it was to more efficiently segregate COX and NOx from flue gases. So it would attach itself. I don't know if you have something like this. It would attach itself to the emissions from your manufacturing plants, separate out the two, and then essentially capture the carbon dioxide. The challenge is always what do you do with so much carbon dioxide? So back then in 2011, when no one honestly cared about saving the planet. And they said, yeah, we know the carbon tax is $30 a ton, but everything costs $60 a ton. So we're not really interested. And so they got 1 or 2 customers in India, but they moved to the UK, got grants, and they're well ahead of the curve. And finally, now they're just getting raging demand. And it was sitting at, believe it or not, $20-30 million of value. That too on paper. It's not like they have more than $7-8 million of revenue even today. And suddenly Chevron led like a $150 million round into them, like last year. And so that chemistry is being valued, to your point. That's the only one we have in chemistry. We have a lot in manufacturing, but it's hard metal manufacturing or automation manufacturing. So I think one curious thing we observed is coming to how you grew. Actually, let me take a step back. How did sort of Vinati plan as a company, its equity and debt layout, and what were your sources of capital as you grew? Because it always stumps people that with such little baseline equity capital, very large companies can be built. So that is not very well understood in the venture capital world. Whereas if you look at private equity or public markets, those are the companies that like to fund because a lot of the financial, prudence is already built into the company. So little bit of that journey, perhaps.
Sure.
How did you grow into an IPO, and what sources of capital? Was it all bootstrapped before that?
Yeah. So when my father started in 1990,
Ah.
before that he was a service,
That's right. He was an employee.
he needed, I believe, 20 crores to set up this factory to make IBB.
Okay.
So how did he go about raising money? He made a project report. That's how he got to know of this product, because the state government was actually looking for a partner.
Oh.
This product needed to be made in India because there was
Okay.
demand in India and it was being imported into the country. And he saw the price at which is being imported, and
This is the predecessor to PLIs.
something like that.
Yeah.
And he saw the price it could be made. He said it's a good enough risk for me to leave my job and get into this.
Fascinating.
He got IFP, the French Institute, to be the license provider. So he took a loan from ICICI. He IPO'd. Back then, that's how IPOs were done. They were done at the face value of the shares. 10 rupee share was IPO'd at 10 rupee.
I try to educate my kids on this. They don't.
Because that is all he had.
Oh, I wasn't aware of this. So you actually did IPO?
Yeah, so we've been listed since the very foundation of this company.
What a fascinating story.
Yeah, and that's how companies were started. Many companies.
90s, what was your source of money?
What was your source of money?
You had to go to the public and put out your
And then
arms.
the state government had some stake, and he had sweat equity, but with a buyback clause that over time he could buy stake back from the state government, which he did. But also what he did, whatever dividends he would get, he kept buying more stake from the public markets.
Oh, fascinating.
So he increased his stake over time from his sweat equity of whatever it was, 20%, or maybe, I don't know, to it was 69 by the percent already by the time I joined. And today it's at 74, simply because SEBI doesn't allow us to go beyond 75 now.
Oh, fascinating. What a story.
It's so different from today's founders.
No, I was aware because I'm old enough to have seen the original IPOs. And the other day I was speaking to Havells bought one of our companies. So we were talking to same generation, right? 70s, in fact. So I was saying, what era did you folks IPO, sir? And then he says 87 or something. And the market cap was like 20 crores or something like that, right? And something of that nature, 50 crores. And today it's 35,000 crores, right? So journeys were like that back then. An IPO meant that's the only source of risk capital. Yeah, who else took risk capital? Unless you were born into a rich family or you had a community that could give you a family and friends around, you had to go. And 20 crores is a lot of money.
But to his credit, now again, to stick to that holding over time, in the last 15 years, as the share price moved up, there's temptation
to say that
to dilute some stake, to offload, but he kept consolidating.
Amazing.
That's a belief to have in your business, and to also realize, which I keep saying, equity actually is the most expensive source of capital.
It is.
People think debt is more expensive, but your return on equity has to be higher.
Absolutely. So the business has been generating dividends from the get-go, clearly, and so it's never been a loss-making enterprise.
No.
And when you come in, you're continuing to do these buybacks and you're growing. And so never had the need for external capital post that, I'm guessing. But since you brought up this debt issue, you've never had the need for debt? Is that internal cash flow?
That's not true. Actually, we did have some debt on the books when I joined.
Yeah.
I don't remember how much. And we are not opposed to debt.
Okay.
Like I said, I still think debt is cheaper than raising money through equity.
Yeah.
We took debt from IFC in 2010-11, which also I think was a very good... It brought us in the spotlight, having a company like IFC and not going to a traditional bank, because their level of due diligence, the reason they invested in our...
sometimes it's to self-discipline.
Yeah, exactly that. The governance and it was actually FCC. It was convertible into equity, which they did. And that, because they believed in our process, our clean and green chemistry. And so that gave us a lot of credibility to the investors and then even customers.
All of these are very value additive, right? So, I mean, you can get some Blume money, but that's not going to change things. But if you go public or if you start getting DFI money or bank money, you suddenly build a lot of credibility with all stakeholders. So at this point, the company is debt free.
It's been debt free for a long time now.
So fundamentally, this is a company that continues to grow methodically, gives dividends to all its shareholders, and keeps growing at an incredible pace, as we can see. Maybe before I get to specifics of compounding and what lessons you have for entrepreneurs, what about the future trajectory for Vinati? So, like, yes, you touched upon a lot of things around intergenerational, the fact that it has to be built long term. There's no intent to ever sell a business of this nature. Clearly, not just specialty chemicals getting hot, but it is a very, very large global market. So, is there in your vision that you've set out for the company? You're super young, so I don't know how much longer you will be at the helm, 20 years, 30 years. How large do you think this gets?
So, I've had all of us in our company, and my father and I, we've had a very simple metric that we want to grow every year 15 to 20%. Now, that's it. Now if you compound that over 5 years, maybe it doubles 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
And growth is not linear.
Yeah.
There will be years where you may grow 25, 30%. There will be flat years. There may be a negative, but you take it in your stride, accept it. And that's really the vision for the next 20 years. And then how do you get to that growth? I think you touched upon your markets being limited, and that's absolutely right. In a B2B business with specialty products, once you've achieved 60% market share in a product, you can't grow beyond that.
That's right.
So you add other products, you diversify. We've also grown through adding capacity. First, adding capacities, becoming one of the top 3 in that particular product, and then diversifying.
Understood. And you've not gone the acquisitions path?
Not yet. So far it's been all organic growth.
Is that generally fear of the unknown, or you're just happy with the growth that's up now? So don't need to really diversify that way?
No, it's really more about the acquisition should make sense. It should be a strategic acquisition where we can add value to the table. And it really has to fit in our portfolio of things. And so far, I haven't come across such a product or such a company.
Understood. If I may say so, like the journey seems almost picture perfect, fairy tale. I mean, in the sense that, and so now I want to hear the tough knocks, right? It's been 17 years now at the firm. What are the real tough moments? Like, what were they? Why did they appear? Like, what did they make you think about? Just curious, and what those could have been. Any 1 or 2 examples would be great.
No, so ours is again, you have to keep developing new products. You work on certain product. It takes five years to develop. You're working on the process. You're working on a unique process. In that sense, you can say it's a bit of R&D driven. And there has been an instance where we've spent almost 10 years working on a product which we thought would be our next step. And then finally you realize that this is not giving me the results that I expected, or my trials are unsuccessful, and move on. COVID was a down year. This year, it's a down year for our industry as well as for our company, just simply because the last 2 years were so good.
Yeah. So everyone's cut back on production.
Yeah. So, but you have to look at it over 5 years or over 10 years. How have I grown over the last 5 years? And then you make peace with it.
Understood. So you've always thought of, I mean, that approach also helps you to pace your growth and have enough cushion so that the setback of a year or 2 can't shake you up. Can you grow consistently 15, 20%, right? Or 25%? And then lo and behold, suddenly you're in the 5th, 6th year and everything is doubled. And when invariably, that's the top line. And then your bottom line is probably done even better if you put in the right ingredients for sort of sustainable growth. So to us, we are trying to get enough of our tech ecosystem to think in that fashion and say, buddy, once you get to that point, it's far smoother to be able to grow because you're able to withstand shocks from, venture capital or growth venture capital dole-outs. And the public markets will love you for it. And we don't have enough great tech companies in the public markets yet. We only have a handful. And if we can get that to be dozens and dozens, then we probably have the beginnings of something. new. Just as you're one of the great stories in specialty chemicals, I don't think we have enough in tech. Given where how much we contribute as a tech ecosystem to the globe, the US is showing 30-40% dominance of tech stocks, and we just don't have that here. I mean, one, if you have a view, you can challenge me on that. But I would love to see more of a directional trend on that. Because tech scales on many levers much faster. When you look at a manufacturing business like yours, I know you've reconciled to this stable growth and not taking too many crazy risks. But even that, when it comes to, margins, let's talk about pressures and margins, stock prices, not that relevant, perhaps. I don't think you think in that fashion. Employee turnover, stability, like, you're building a long-term business, but not everybody necessarily wants to be in a stable business, especially in a hot new economy like India. And just culture. What do you think are the key ingredients to compounding, right? What has to be in place in a company for it to actually hit this steady state?
Few things.
Hmm.
I think I've touched upon it briefly before. I think your product selection is key. I think what you call in your industry the idea. In our case, it's a product selection and what's the unique proposition that you're adding. Second is your belief in your company. And that belief has to seep down to the very bottom.
Hmm.
They have to believe in what you're making,
Hmm.
why you're making, who you're supplying,
Hmm.
why you have to service your customer. Another, you touched upon culture. We have actually very less turnover in our organization, employee turnover. People who stick on, they really stick on with us. And just giving people a lot of accountability, responsibility, and ownership of what they do. Each person is an entrepreneur in his own regard.
That's fascinating. Yeah, even for a company of this scale and
given how our turnover has increased or volumes, our number of employee strength has not increased as much. And that means you're giving more ownership and more responsibility per employee.
And do you think that's the primary driver of what employees are looking for today in the industry? And is it far superior to any other experience in the industry, and that's why they're staying here?
Probably.
And you find like a steady base of, given its manufacturing as a sector, don't see any challenges in where interests are diversifying today. I mean, it's happened through our engineering careers, right? Everyone wanted to go to computer science and not necessarily pursue. I know you said there's a trend line shifting on that.
But that's very recent.
Very recent,
You're absolutely right. I mean, the most of the 15 years we've lost good talent to other engineering divisions and even the good chemical engineers will join IT companies.
Yeah. Does your father share a different view of some of these elements of culture and compounding, or was it his foundation that you built on top of? And given that he's the chair now, how does that relationship work, to the extent that you can share it? I know it's a personal question.
No, absolutely. I think at any point, two people working together, we have agreed to disagree.
Okay.
May not be publicly, but privately, certainly. We do. And whoever makes a more persuading, logical argument, in the end, we both hear out the other person. So it's a very objective relationship in that regard. One key difference, I still think he's more cost sensitive and budget sensitive, and that's the culture that they.
Yeah, he had to grow up.
Yeah, he grew up with that.
Yeah, otherwise he wouldn't have survived this.
Exactly.
Understood. So in our case, what we've found is manufacturing business models have been found to be deemed relatively unsexy by VCs. So this year, for the first time, you're seeing headlines. And I'll tell you where they're coming from. They're coming from the fact that the world is branding India as the to-go strategy today. While Vietnam is good, and while the US will depend on a Mexico, and while there are other centers, the combination of labor pool, the scale of labor pool, the cost, and the fact that they need a strategic alternative to China just makes it impossible to ignore. If you look at someone like Taiwan and Foxconn being here, they have to. It's a political risk as well. So you're seeing Apple bursting from the seams. It's just a phenomenal play, not just for chemicals, but for manufacturing as a whole. And I think while that is changing, I think the worries still are, oh my gosh, it's a capex business. Oh my God, it's like hardware or chemicals. Margins are bound to be low. These fears are there. Again, it's perception, right? And for the first time, we're seeing, an example was one company of ours, 4 years, nobody paid it any attention. And finally, boom, suddenly it's got like, $5 million, everything's in place. Customers are flying in from Israel and the US and checking it out. It's still a very small business. But if you had told me 2 years ago, I would have said, oh my gosh, no one's looking at this. This might die a sorry death, right? But the founder is resilient. He fought. And once he's reached here, suddenly getting a lot of attention. So given your experiences on how maybe the markets or customers or India was perceived, any tips you would like to give to entrepreneurs today? And what do you think has changed in the last 15, 20 years that you've been in witnessing Indian manufacturing?
I think manufacturing in India makes a lot of sense. It's not just, there is a hype, no doubt, and why you touched, because China plus one strategy.
Yeah.
But we still have to realize when we put up a plant in India, the capex is much less than for the same plant that would be put up in Europe or USA or even China for that matter. Then you come to OPEX. Our OPEX is also much lower. Our salary structures are lower even compared to China. Seldom people can sustain loss in a manufacturing. Most of them will be cash flow positive after the first 2 or 3 years.
That's right.
So manufacturing in India makes sense. Now, whether people are overvaluing this manner, that's a different, but it is here to grow. The challenges are certainly in our infrastructure. There's still, things like power availability and our general road infrastructure and lack of good ports, etc.
You still think we're not up to the mark on that?
Compared to China, we are still way behind.
And how many manufacturing facilities now would you have?
We have about 3. We have 3
sites. Locations, 3 sites.
And we're building a 4th one, yeah.
And all proximity to Bombay?
In Bombay, all in Maharashtra, near Bombay.
What does equity value mean to a founder who has no intent to really sell? And it's very different where if a young founder has not built a dividend path for them, they do seek some validation of the journey. So you have to sell some, and that's what's happening actually. So we're seeing ESOPs being sold, we're seeing founder equity being sold, so that there is some cushion. And unlike your dad's journey before you came here ensured that a lot of these people are in the minority today in terms of ownership. So they don't necessarily control their fate as much as they think they might, right? If push comes to shove, a founder can be asked to leave as well, then replaced with an executive. And that's a board decision at this juncture. And I think it's important for them to understand, how does it feel like if you're a majority owner and you don't need to validate this because you're profitable and you get enough dividends that you don't have to touch your equity value. So when stock price is going up and it's 20,000 crores and next step is 30,000, what does that mean for you? Like, have you thought about what does that wealth creation on paper mean?
Like you said, it's just a validation. And it's also a, product of the liquidity in the market. Like I said, in my journey, I have seen my company being given a multiple in the range of 5 times P to 70 times P. Of course, there's a factor of growth and margins, but I think the bigger factors, at least in the public market, are external factors. The liquidity, what sector is this flavor. There will be very good times. There won't be such good times. If you're not interested in selling or raising money through equity, then just take it with a pinch of salt.
So you don't pay much attention to it at all?
There's no need.
In your case, there's absolutely no. Again, specific, yes, I am touching upon a few sort of gender-related issues. One is, again, manufacturing historically, even though it might be intergenerational, like you said, it's still been on the floor, the leadership, very male-dominated, right? And of course, having your father's guidance definitely helps you navigate those challenges. But have you ever felt that from customer industry?
Actually, manufacturing is a
leveler, is it?
Yeah, it's a level, because in this business, it doesn't matter what your gender is or what even your age is. It's your product, your price, your quality, and that's all. Really, who's selling the product, who's making it. So as a business, I think it doesn't affect. people's perception also, once they know your job, you know what you're talking about, these differences don't matter.
Product
Don't matter.
talks.
But yes, there are fewer women in our industry. That has historically been a challenge. Women don't opt for traditional engineering like mechanical or chemical, right? They take IT. They find it easier to get recruited there, and that industry has done a better job also of making provisions for women, accommodating.
That's great.
But our industry is changing. If you travel abroad,
Yeah.
most MNC chemical companies have a lot more women, even in China, and that is coming here.
Understood.
In the corporate section, like in sales and purchase, you'll see a lot more women as opposed to at the plant level.
And you have a community amongst yourselves as well. Is there like a collective effort from women leaders to try and push more entrepreneurship into the community, or?
I think I may be on 10 WhatsApp women leader chats.
Understood.
We want to know each other.
Absolutely.
We want,
absolutely.
because we want to understand from what our challenges are and also encourage each other.
Absolutely. You're all riding on each other's shoulders in that sense. And this continues to, I don't know if there are any good ideas, and I'm actually trying to see if I can borrow some. I spoke a little bit about it at the ET Awards when they called me up on stage and said, what do you think are the challenges in tech, and why aren't we seeing enough women founders? Why aren't we seeing enough, stories that women have taken to unicorn or profitability or IPO or whatever the metric is? And the number is appallingly low. I mean, there's no running away from that. Both lesser in terms of employee base, I think that's getting better for all the reasons you said. A lot of women in study in tech, but at the leadership level, and even in our industry, for example, so we are guilty of being, the first 5 partners are all men. So we're trying to groom the next set, and we're trying to encourage them to think that it's their time in the sun. And one of the things I said on stage is and this is the reason I did insist that I wanted someone like you on the podcast. I think role models are important, right? And while you might have access at this juncture, I can assure you there are hundreds of them who don't, right? So when you discuss amongst yourselves, do you have ideas for emerging youngsters? I know you have a support group with each other in some sense, but how do you convey that to a 23-year-old from an IIM or an IIT? I know you look around you and it's male dominated everywhere, but it's not as scary as it should be. What do you think could be good ideas? And do you have any suggestions for us at Blume to be able to pull something off?
So I'll give you an example. It's a very specific example.
Yeah.
For example, I'm in YPO.
Yeah.
Now they've made me, this thing for this South Asian region, how to recruit more women in YPO.
Oh.
Because women don't join.
Yeah.
Because the reason is, even if they qualify, they have their other family things to take care of.
Correct.
But they don't realize the network that they're missing out on.
Yeah.
So encouraging them across the region.
Thanks again, Vinati. This was fantastic. Before we wrap up, I would love to take you through a few minutes of a rapid fire. This can be one word, one phrase, one sentence. I know we've been told that you love to exercise, keep fit. What is the exercise you dislike the most?
I think that would be swimming.
Okay.
Just not
Yeah.
water.
So you're not a big fan of that. In your journey, not just in your personal journey, but what you've seen along the leaders that you've built in the firm, what do you think is more important, talent or resilience?
Absolutely resilience. Talent without resilience is meaningless.
And you think the best leaders that you've built and the best entrepreneurs have built have that remarkable consistency?
Yes.
And fitness and health for you means what?
I think it supersedes success. Success is meaningless without good health.
Well said. No, it feels cliched, but as you keep growing older, I think founders ignore this. Who would you consider a role model other than, of course, your father, who's started this?
A woman founder who's from a similar industry who I really admire is Kiran Majumdar-Shaw.
Yeah.
She's built it out on her own. And it's an industry I can somewhat relate to.
And you've had a chance to meet her?
Actually, never in person. I've never interacted with her in person.
She was one of our potential choices for this. So at some point, we should get you to meet her as well. Yeah. I know you've obviously probably built enough talent diversity at the workplace, but one quality where women are inherently far better than us men
again, this may sound cliched, but they have to be better at multitasking.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
But a lot of the other responsibilities outside work come on women, and that is what we need to work on as a society.
Yeah.
Rather than just putting us or women on a pedestal that you're better at multitasking, so you multitask. Those jobs need to be shared equally between men and women, so that we don't have to be better at multitasking.
No, thank you once again. It was a wonderful conversation. Despite your reservations, I think you're a shining example of what a woman leader can achieve today in India. We'd love for a lot of our young women aspirational leaders in tech to listen to these stories, because I don't think entrepreneurial journeys are about one sector or the other. The challenges are about the same. And we, as I mentioned, we do a community initiative called Lead Tribe, which was actually started by young women in the firm. It was an entrepreneurial initiative by them. They said, we've talked about it, but again, no one moves. So the women said, can we take it upon ourselves and see whether they can get, all we're asking of you is time. So I'm throwing an idea back at, maybe all the communities that you're a part of. So what we do is we put them through a vetting process, and we literally select 20-25 founders and do a little bit of a virtual, now a hybrid, thanks to post-COVID, a hybrid boot camp where they can exchange stories, they can relate, empathize with each other, and also sort of get everyone from like Kunal Shah of Cred to me talking about fundraising, and it's their journeys. I mean, these are all young women founders in tech, right? So it has to be relatable. And I feel at every strata there are women leaders who are looking for a step up in mentorship. So hoping that Vinati Saraf becomes one of those.
Karthik, incidentally, while not much involved in your VC tech world,
Yeah.
my very first job, which was my very first internship, was with a tech VC firm called Insight Venture Partners.
So yeah, you've seen our world a bit.
And back then, we were making the one example I remember from that 10-week internship. We were debating whether to invest in Facebook or no. Back in 2004, they did not. They
didn't end up investing. Fascinating. So yes, you've seen a glimpse of it, and I know you're an investor and you support some funds and you do some investing in tech. So thank you for all of that, and we hope to see more of you in the tech world. So thank you once again.